Mark weighed 325 pounds, and he and Sarah had recently lost a couple of friends to heart attacks. She began to worry about Mark, and, to cut a long story short, she stopped having sex with him, only allowing him 4 times a year unless he met his weight loss goals. Been 4 times for Valentine's Day, their anniversary, and birthdays. Over the course of 2 years, Mark lost significant weight and took advantage of additional sex as he reached milestones, but was mostly deprived of sex. He lost a huge amount of weight and got down to about 207 pounds, at which point he wanted to stop. After all, he lost 118 pounds, and it was incredibly difficult. When Mark said he wanted to stop, Sarah replied, "No way, mate." That's when she made the threat that inspired this story. "If you stop, you'll only get sex 4 times a year. But I have sexual needs, and even if you only get sex 4 times a year, I'll be forced to satisfy my needs somewhere else." In those moments after Sarah made that threat, she saw the foundation of their marriage shake. It started when Mark suddenly raised his head and looked into her eyes with an expression of complete shock and confusion. She saw the foundation of their marriage crack as sadness and resentment crossed his face, all as a result of her words. She watched as the foundation of their marriage began to crumble at her feet as his sadness and resentment turned to anger and disgust. She realized then and there that she had made a critical mistake. Sarah pushed this man, whom she loved deeply, to the limit to fulfill her wishes, to lose all this weight, and then threatened to have sex with other men to punish him for not achieving her goals. How could she be so stupid? How could she do this to him? Mark was furious. He said, "I worked my ass off for 2 years to lose over 100 pounds for you, Sarah. It was incredibly difficult for me, and during that time you deprived me of sex to force me to continue. I did it all for you, Sarah, because I love you and wanted to please you, and now that I can't do it anymore, you reward me, saying that you will continue to deprive me of sex and will even satisfy your needs with other men. You may not realize it yet, Sarah, but you just destroyed our marriage. You threw a gorilla into the middle of our house, and now I don't know if we can lock it up again. You've clearly been thinking about sex with other men. Otherwise, I couldn't come up with this ultimatum so quickly. How do you expect me to trust you now? You've been sleeping with someone all this time to satisfy your needs for these 2 years. Damn it, Sarah, damn me anymore. I don't know what to think about our marriage. You just ruined everything, that's all I can say." Sarah said, "Mark, I didn't want this. I would never sleep with someone else. Please, Mark, I didn't want this." Mark simply looked at her with disgust. "How am I supposed to trust anything you say now? You looked quite serious a few minutes ago." Mark got up from the kitchen table and headed into the garage. "I need time to think." Tears began to flow down Sarah's face as she lost control of herself. She sat there sobbing because she knew he was right. The seed of doubt had been planted in his mind, and it would not be easy to get rid of it. Sometimes words are said without thinking, and that's what happened here. Sarah just didn't think about how it would affect Mark. She was so proud of him for his achievements, but she became greedy and wanted more. She thought, "It was all for me. He has already done so much for me, but I became greedy and wanted more, and now I will have to return what I lost." Mark dug around in the garage for about an hour. He wasn't doing anything specific, just keeping his hands busy, thinking about everything. Mark didn't really think his wife had been cheating on him in the last 2 years, but he wasn't sure. Previously, he would have been sure, but after her words, now he could not be sure of it. He also didn't know whether she would cheat on him in the future or not. Before, he would never have believed it, but now he was no longer sure. He said out loud, "I need to find out." Mark returned to the house. Sarah was still sitting on the kitchen chair, looking terrible. Her eyes were red from crying, and her nose was red too. Mark noticed this and felt regret, but was determined to follow through with his plans. "Sarah, here's what's going to happen. I'm stopping the diet right now. You don't have to worry about depriving me of sex, because now I'm depriving you. We can have sex the same 4 times a year you set before if you want. If you want to give it up altogether, that's fine too, I don't care. However, let me tell you that if you decide to have sex with someone else, you won't like the consequences when I talk about it. I'll find out, and I'll find out. And depending on my mood at the time, it could be even worse. As for you, if you cheat on me, I will throw you out on the street so quickly that you won't have time to understand what happened. You will become a free woman, able to satisfy your needs anytime and anywhere. I will never stay married to a cheating wife, so decide for yourself what to do. And just so you know, I will be watching your every move from now on. I don't trust you anymore, so you'll have to be very careful in everything you do. But you can't be so careful as to hide your betrayal from me. I'm going away for a while. I won't be back for lunch, but will be here for dinner. If you don't feel like cooking, that's okay. We can order pizza or Chinese food if you don't cook. Mark took the car keys from the counter and walked out into the garage. Moments later, Sarah heard the garage door open and heard Mark's car drive away. Sarah said out loud, "Oh God, I can't believe this. How could I be so stupid?" She started sobbing again and just sat there, wishing she would keep her mouth shut. After an hour or so, she got up to go to the bathroom, then went and lay down on her bed and cried again. When Mark arrived home later that day, he found her in exactly the same position. Like many husbands who suspect their wives are cheating, Mark decided to do his own investigation. He thought the easiest way would be to go to the phone providers and request a printout of the call logs of their home phone and his wife's phone. Both phones were in his name, so he did not expect problems receiving reports. The landline company told him he could get them electronically and was able to download the last 3 years of call logs onto a CD for a small fee. He paid willingly and left the office with everything he requested. Yes, he asked for 3 years because he wanted to be able to go back to when he started the diet to find out if there was any reason for Sarah to deprive him of sex in the first place. He then went to the cell phone company and requested similar data. They were initially hesitant as it was his wife's phone number for which he had requested details, but Mark pointed out that it was a joint account on which his name clearly appeared, so they had no reason to refuse him the requested information. They offered the data electronically for a fee of $20. Mark thought it was an excessive amount, but it was probably worth paying to have easier access to the information. He made a note that he might reconsider his cell phone provider in the future. Arriving home around 4 p.m., Mark saw Sarah lying on their bed, fast asleep. He decided not to wake her and went to their home office. Having locked the office door so that no one would disturb him, he sat down at the computer and downloaded all the data from 2CDS into a folder in his documents. He has already developed a plan for how he will conduct the search. He was going to start 2 years ago and make a list of all the phone numbers that were called in the first month when he started the diet and when Sarah limited him to sex to 4 times a year, plus rewards for achieving goals. It was September 2008. Their home phone had 96 calls to 19 different numbers in September. He found that by using the format provided by the telephone company, he could sort the data in different ways, so he created a list by number, showing the number, date, time, and duration of the call. Once he figured out the system, it took him about an hour and a half to create this list of all the calls made from their home phone in the last 2 years. He was almost ready to begin the same process for Sarah's cell phone data when he heard the office door handle creak. The door was locked so no one could enter, so he kept everything he did and hid all evidence of his activities. He logged out and went to open the door to see the most pathetic scene he could imagine. Sarah stood there in a seriously unkempt state, with disheveled hair, red eyes from crying, and a red nose, sobbing every now and then. She tilted her head down and reluctantly raised her eyes and looked into Mark's eyes. She said, "Mark, I'm so sorry for what I did to you. I know you're hurt and angry at me, and I know I was selfish and cruel in doing and saying the things I did. Please forgive me. I know you've had great results with your diet, and I shouldn't have had anything to do with whether you continued it or not, but I guess I just felt empowered and got carried away. I'm sorry." Mark replied, "Sarah, I forgive you now only because I don't know anything else yet. I love you, and I lost all this weight for you. I struggled with this for 2 years and gave up sex during that time, all for you. First of all, I just couldn't do it anymore. Unfortunately, like I said, the gorilla is now in the room, and I need to know for sure if you cheated on me, or it will drive me crazy. So, if you didn't cheat, me in the past, and you won't cheat on me in the future, will probably be fine, but I need to know, and until I'm sure, you'll have to live with it. I didn't create this problem, you created it with your quick comment, and a threat. I can't imagine how you thought I might react to that, but obviously you never thought about how it would affect my feelings or our trust, otherwise you wouldn't have said what you said. Sarah hoped that Mark would just forgive her and forget about what she said, but that didn't happen. She thought, I probably deserve everything that's happening to me, but I was hoping that all this could be forgotten. She nodded slowly in agreement and, dejected, returned to the bedroom and closed the door behind her. She lay down on the bed again, no longer sobbing, but with tears streaming down her cheeks. Mark opened the bedroom door and asked, Sarah, do you want something to eat? Sarah said, No, Mark, I'm not hungry. Mark went out to the car and drove off again to a nearby place called Grisha. He and Sarah went there for drinks many times, and the food was great. He knew he could have a couple of beers and eat a greasy but tasty bacon cheeseburger. He hadn't had more than 2 beers in a week in the last 2 years and ate not a single bacon cheeseburger. Tonight he was going to relax and enjoy dinner, although his heart was breaking for his wife because he hated seeing her in this state. But it was also breaking from the pain and distrust she had for him. Imposed. When he got home, he went back to the office and started working on the call log from Sarah's phone. Because he already knew the procedure, creating a mobile phone list took him half the time. After reviewing the 2 lists, Mark determined that over 2 years, 482 calls were made from a total of 45 different phone numbers. He decided to sort calls by phone number and got some surprising results. Almost 300 calls were made to his mobile phone, about 200 calls to his parents' number, and about the same number of calls to Sarah's parents' number. There were also about 200 calls to each of Sarah's sisters, and about half that number to his brother John's number. In addition, there were several calls to friends whose numbers Mark recognized, and several calls to numbers he did not recognize. Looking through the list, he discovered that there were over 200 calls to a number he didn't recognize, and another 50-plus calls to another number he didn't recognize. He then noticed that there were several calls, over 30 to additional numbers, that were made over a 2-year period. He suggested that these could be hairdressers, shops, a church, etc. None of these statistics bothered Mark, so he simply noted them and returned to the 2 main unfamiliar numbers. Being the type of person that he is, Mark decided to refine his research and sorted the calls by day and time for these 2 numbers. The surprising results left him in awe, and almost immediately he began to seethe with suspicion and anger. Every Wednesday at 11:00 a.m., Mark went to a meeting with his boss and other department heads at a local restaurant with conference rooms. They would conference for an hour, have lunch, and wrap up their work by 2:30 or 3:00 in the afternoon, without exception. Every week. At 10:55 every Wednesday, he received a call on his mobile phone. Yes, there were weeks that were missed, and Mark immediately realized that these were his vacation weeks. But every Wednesday at 10:55 this was the rule. At 11:05 every Wednesday a call was made to the first of 2 numbers that Mark did not recognize. Oh yes, he was furious. There are too many coincidences not to suspect. He knew at that moment that what he would discover would not bring him joy. As he continued his research, he looked at the second number and quickly realized that these calls were made on Friday at 1:05 p.m. Once a month on Friday, Mark played golf with his brother and their best friends. They played 18 holes, which took them until 5:30 p.m., and stopped at the clubhouse for a couple of drinks before heading home. He was usually home before 6:30 p.m. on Fridays. He showered and took Sarah out to dinner. What made him angry was that Sarah always called him right before he started playing to tell him that she loved him and would be waiting for him when he got home. Now he knew what was going on, but he didn't yet have visual evidence, and didn't know who she was cheating on him with. The scary thing was that he didn't know how long it had been going on, and whether it only started after Sarah stopped having sex, or if it started before. So he went back a year and found that the same calls were being made once a month for 3 months before she stopped having sex. Whatever Sarah did, she had done it 3 months before, but not as often. Now all he had to do was figure out who it was and then decide what he was going to do about it. He thought it would be easy to find out who it was. He ran a reverse lookup on the first number and discovered it was a cell phone number that was not registered. He ran a reverse search on the second number and found that the number was registered to Tony Bertoli. Of course, Mark knew who Tony Bertoli was. It was his trainer at the gym. Sarah found it for Mark from the very beginning. So, Sarah called Tony on Fridays when I was playing golf, Mark thought. He noted the address in his electronic call log and decided to go outside again. When he returned to Grisha, he sat down and drank a couple more beers. As things began to calm down from the evening's rush, Mark asked the pretty barmaid Brenda to help him. He explained to her a little about what had happened and said that he just wanted to know if the number one belonged to Tony. He dialed the number and told Brenda, "Just ask if I can talk to Tony, and if it's him, tell him you've been given his number as a possible coach." He told her, "If it's him, tell him that if he has an opening, you'll come to the gym to talk to him." Brenda picked up the phone. "Hi, is this Tony?" she asked. "Oh, my name is Jennifer." "Yes, some woman gave me your number as a possible coach." "No, I didn't know her, but we were talking about getting in shape, and she gave me your number." Laughing, "Yeah, I'm 24 years old, 5'6", and a little chubby right now, weighing about 130 pounds. I think you're checking me out over the phone. I know I could tighten up a little and be happier if I weighed about 115 pounds, but I look fine, thank you very much. Do you have any vacancies? Oh, I see. One of your clients recently decided to stop training and you have an opening. Great. I'll come see you in a couple of days and we can discuss what I need to do to achieve results. Thanks, Tony. See you soon. Mark sat there, amazed at what Brenda had just done. She confirmed that it was Tony from the gym and found out that he was indeed trying to hit on the women who hired him as a trainer. She even confirmed that he had an opening due to someone stopping training. Mark thought, this guy who stopped training must be me. Hell, Sarah already called Tony to tell him what happened and to warn him to be extra careful. However, even though he felt worse than ever, Mark was amused by what Brenda said. He didn't know or care how much she actually weighed. She was simply gorgeous. She didn't need to lose an ounce. Mark smiled at her and told her that she was too funny and that he thought she was perfect the way she was, so she should stay away from Tony. He said, "No one could have a more perfect body than you, Brenda." Brenda gave him her most beautiful smile and said, "Thank you, kind sir. Your compliments make me blush. Honestly, Mark, you are so handsome. I don't understand why your wife would look at anyone else. Any girl would be happy to have you as a friend and lover." Mark smiled to himself. "Well, Brenda, 2 years ago, I wasn't as handsome as you say, but that still doesn't justify her cheating. Thank you for your help, and I wish I could stay and talk, but I guess it's better to go home. I'm very grateful to you for what you did for me, helped me find out information about Tony, and raised my low self-esteem." Mark went home and, since it was already late, just went to bed. As he climbed into bed, he looked at Sarah and felt a sense of loss and disappointment. He didn't think he'd ever felt this bad, but he was sure he'd feel worse before it was all over. Sarah woke up slightly as he lay down and said, "I love you, Mark." Mark simply grumbled in response and turned away from her, trying to sleep. Of course, he couldn't fall asleep right away and lay there thinking about many things. He thought he heard her sniffle or two, but she seemed to have calmed down. When Mark arrived at work, he told his boss that he had problems at home. He briefly explained this to his boss, who told him to take whatever time he needed to deal with his suspicions. The boss also gave Mark the name of an excellent electronics supplier who could supply him with the necessary surveillance equipment. Mark thanked the boss for his concern and help. He said he would leave after lunch and not return until the end of the week, Wednesday through Friday. The boss smiled at him, knowing what Mark was going to do, and wished him luck. Mark went to an electronics supplier and learned that the boss had called ahead and asked that they take care of any items he needed. Mark didn't think he could handle visual evidence, but he could record conversations. He bought 3 top-of-the-line bugs with enough battery life to transmit many hours of activity to a receiver within a few city blocks when the operator downloaded the data. When Mark got home, dinner was already on the table, and it was something special, his favorite lasagna with garlic bread and sweet green peas. He thanked Sarah for a wonderful dinner and excused himself to go watch TV. Sarah cleaned up the kitchen and joined him in the TV room, but was smart enough not to get too close. At night, Sarah went into the bedroom and Mark took the opportunity to install one of the bugs inside their home phone. This would give him a complete recorded conversation from any phone. Both participants in the conversation will be heard. He was a little nervous about bugging Sarah's phone, but he decided, screw it, just do it and don't worry about it. After a few minutes, he finished. Now he knew that he had a source of information from both phones. The hard part was putting the bug on Tony's phone. Mark probably didn't need to hear Tony's conversations with Sarah because he already had her phones under surveillance. But in case she was smart enough not to use her phone and went to a payphone or something, I decided to try to install a bug on Tony's phone. Mark remembered that Tony worked with this well-built blonde on Wednesday mornings and usually stayed close to her the entire time she was at the gym. I need to bug his phone, and this is the right time to do it. He won't notice anything for an hour. He walked into the gym and saw Tony's phone lying on his towel about 10 feet from where Tony was working out with the blonde. Mark knew it would be risky to take the phone, but again he thought, what do I have to lose? He snuck up, took the phone and put it in his pocket, and then left the gym and went to the men's room. There he easily inserted a bug into Tony's phone. The hard part was getting the phone back in place. When he returned to the gym, he saw that Tony was already finishing with the blonde. Mark knew that he would not have time to return the phone to the towel and leave again without being noticed. Damn, he thought, how can I do it? After a few seconds, he decided to try rolling the phone across the floor towards the towel, hoping it wouldn't arouse Tony's suspicion. It was a risk, but he decided to take it and rolled the phone. The phone made a small noise, but Tony was so busy with the blonde that he didn't notice anything. Fortunately, the phone rolled to the towel and touched its edge. It was perfect. Mark thought that now there was no chance that Tony would suspect anything, and quickly left the gym. At exactly 10:55 a.m., his cell phone rang. It was Sarah. She said she just wanted to contact him before he went to the meeting. Of course, Mark didn't tell her that he was taking the rest of the week off and wouldn't be going to the meeting. 10 minutes later, Mark began monitoring the bugs using the receiver in his car. Tony's phone rang, and he quickly answered. Tony said, "Hey, Sarah, how are you, baby? Would you like to meet at my house as usual? I thought you were going to be more careful because Mark was suspicious." Sarah replied, "I really need to be more careful, Tony, because Mark is very suspicious right now. I think we'll have to stop dating at least for a while. If he finds out about us, he will kill you and throw me out. I can't let this happen, Tony. I love having sex with you, but I love Mark and I don't want to lose him." Tony muttered, "But how can you refuse, Sarah? I know that you love him and enjoy him all this time. This is the reason why you stopped having sex with him, so that you could enjoy yourself more with me, so how can you refuse?" Mark groaned as Sarah responded, "You're right. The first time you and I had sex, I knew I'd do anything to be with you more. It wasn't enough in those first 3 months, so I stopped having sex with Mark and started coming to you more often. Maybe in a few weeks things will calm down and we can resume our weekly meetings. But until then, you'll have to be with one of your other girlfriends." Tony replied, "Ah, Sarah, don't be jealous of my other girlfriends. I never let them get in the way of our weekly fun, did I? Do you think we can still meet on those Fridays when he plays golf? She said, "I'm not jealous. I know you need more than I can give, so I don't care what you do when I'm not around. I need to think about Fridays. Maybe this will work. I'll tell you if I think it's possible." Mark has heard enough. It made him sick, but it also angered him to the point where he knew he would get his way. This piece of shit has been cheating on Tony since he started the diet, and even used the diet to deprive him of sex. She slept with him every Wednesday and on those Fridays when he played golf. She had probably slept with him over 100 times in the last 2.5 years. How could she say she loved him when she could so easily go and do what she did? Now he didn't even know if there were other men. It made no difference, as Tony alone was enough to end their marriage. He'll get his way with both. Over the next 2 days, Mark developed his plans and made several contacts to ensure everything was on track by the end of the week. He monitored telephone wiretaps both days. On Thursday morning, Sarah called her hairdresser to make an appointment for Friday morning. It was a very interesting conversation. "Janine, I need a killer new hairstyle. I want something youthful and very sexy." "Why, Sarah? Are you going after another man?" "No, I'm just trying to hold on to what I have. Mark suspects I'm cheating, and I need to get him to think with his body instead of his head again. I'm going to buy some sexy new lingerie sets and see if I can completely distract him so his suspicions go away." "So what are you going to do about Tony? You can't seriously give it up." "Well, I may not give up completely, but for a while for sure, and maybe not as often as I did." They both laughed, and the rest of their conversation didn't matter. Mark, of course, was devastated by what he heard, but by this time his anger was driving him on, and the pain was buried deep inside. Tony called her on Friday when she didn't call him. "Well, baby, do you still want to wait?" "Tony, I can't risk dating you right now. Please be patient, and I promise we will get back to our meetings as soon as Mark has cooled down." With each conversation, Mark's heart broke more and more. He couldn't understand how there could be love in this relationship. It was all about her selfishness and complete lack of care for him, and, of course, respect. He wondered where it all went wrong. Well, his plans were in place, and he would get his way. On Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rang, and Sarah went to answer the door. In front of her stood a beautiful girl wearing a cape and carrying a small bag. "Hi, Sarah. I'm Brenda, Mark's friend. He said it would be nice for me to spend some time by your pool today. I hope I'm not bothering you, but I really want to sunbathe." Sarah was at a loss, but said, "Of course, come in. I'll show you the exit to the pool." Brenda noticed that Sarah was not smiling, and a small smile crept onto her own face. A short time later, the doorbell rang again, and Sarah went to answer it. Sally and Linda stood together. Sally told Sarah that she had been working with Mark for several years, and Linda said that she had served a couple of them and Mark alone at Grisham. They both told Sarah that Mark had invited them to come and use the pool for the afternoon. Both women were very attractive, and Sarah began to wonder what was what. She felt a chill run down her spine several times as she thought about the possible reasons. All three beauties took their chairs and began applying suntan lotion to themselves. It didn't take long before they agreed to help each other so as not to miss a single section. Once they were well lubricated, they lay down on the sun loungers to soak up some sun. After a short time, they decided that a tan all over their bodies would be better, and each untied her bikini top and threw it on the towel next to the sun lounger. Sarah was furious and really wanted to tell them all to leave, but since Mark had invited them, she knew she had to be careful because she was already on thin ice with him, so she didn't say anything. At 3:30 p.m., Brenda walked over to Sarah and sat in the chair opposite her. "Sarah, I have to tell you something. I'm a bartender at Grisham, and when you gave your ultimatum to Mark, he came over for a few beers that night and, frankly, told me everything that happened between you two." Sarah looked stunned, but Brenda continued, "I think you made a big mistake, Sarah, and I don't understand how you could do what you did. Mark is now suspicious of you and is doing a lot of investigation to find out exactly what happened. I think, It's fair to warn you that Mark told me, Sally and Linda, that if he finds out that you cheated on him in the past or cheat on him in the future, he will start sleeping with us for every time you cheated. Sarah's jaw dropped, and she started to say something, but Brenda interrupted her. He also told us that if you lie to him, he will also sleep with us for every time you lie. We all think Mark is a real hottie and would happily accept him, so we're just biding our time to see what will happen. Brenda knew that Mark would sleep with her because she already knew that Sarah had cheated many times and with whom. Sally also came and sat down. I've known Mark for a few years now, and I always thought he was handsome and sweet. I knew he had gained too much weight, but underneath it all he was still the sweet guy he always was, and I had a huge interest in him. I still really like him, and now even more. He became a real handsome man after losing the extra weight, and I know that you are having problems with him now. I just want you to know that I didn't take steps towards him before. But now I'll start. He can be with me at any time, Sarah. Of course, Linda didn't stand aside either. I watched you both for a couple of years and always noticed how much he showed his love for you. I saw how much he cared for you and was always kind and considerate to you. Many times I thought how lucky you were to have someone like him. Man, and dreamed that someday I would be lucky too. In fact, I fantasized that it was me with Mark instead of you. This guy lost 118 pounds to make you happy, became handsome in the process, and you do this to him. What did you do? I know that I'm ready to do anything to have such a man in my bed, so be ready. A moment later, at exactly 4:00, as Mark had agreed with the three women in advance, he walked out the patio doors onto the pool deck and smiled when he saw all four women there. Hey Sarah, I see you've met my three friends, and I also see they've done a good job on their tans. I have to say this is the first time I've seen those lovely breasts, and I'm pleasantly surprised. Lady, you're going to give me the heat. Sarah, why didn't you take off your top? Don't you want to compete for my attention? Sarah was incredibly upset by the events of the day, but realized that it was better to play by the rules. Reluctantly, she untied her top and took it off. Mark said, Sarah, I have a couple of questions for you, and it's vital that you answer them honestly. Have you ever cheated on me in your marriage? Sarah replied, No, never, Mark. Mark continued, Sarah, are you saying you never cheated on me with Tony from the gym? Sarah responded again, No, Mark, I never cheated on you with Tony or anyone else. Where did you get that idea from? Mark continued, So, Sarah, you're saying that you never cheated on me with Tony every Wednesday for over 2 years and on Fridays when I played golf with my brother and friends. Sarah was stunned that Mark knew so much about her affair with Tony, but knew her only hope was to stick to her story, hoping he had no real proof, so she replied, No, Mark, I don't know. What are you talking about? All the while, each of the girls, Brenda, Sally, and Linda, sat with huge smiles on their faces, which grew brighter with each answer Sarah gave to Mark. They knew what was going to happen. Mark said, Well, Sarah, it turns out that you are not only a cheater, but also a liar. You know that you slept with Tony almost every Wednesday from 11 a.m. until who knows what time, and I know it. I got copies of your phone numbers. Logs from both your home phone and your cell phone, and saw every call you made to me at 10:55 a.m. immediately followed by your call to Tony at 11 a.m. I know it was Tony's phone because Brenda called that number and was able to confirm that it was Tony. I don't have pictures of you two together because I didn't want to see this for the rest of my life. But Sarah, I know in my heart that calling him every week wasn't innocent, so I don't need pictures. You're the one who knows what happened, but I am convinced of my own. Sarah was shocked, and it finally hit her hard that Mark knew everything, and she was in for a rough time in their relationship. She started to say something to Mark, and he stopped her. Sarah, there is not much that can be said or anything that can convince me that you have not cheated on me. You know how much I love you, but right now my pain, disgust, and anger are much greater than my love for you. I brought these three lovely ladies here today so you can see them in all their glory. I want to tell you a little about each of them, too. Sally, she's been my work colleague for several years now. She's such a beautiful girl and so sweet. We're good worked all these years, and I had long known that she was attracted to me, and as I became more fit, I saw changes in her that made me understand that she felt even more than attracted to her, and I know that this made her even more interested in me. Believe me, Sally, I am very attracted to you too, but I never took the initiative because I was married and loved my wife very much. Sally smiled, knowing that she and Mark were truly friends and both enjoyed spending time together. I know Linda a lot less. As I know she told you, we only met when you and I went to Grisha and she served us. I could tell she was enjoying seeing us together, and it was only recently that I found out that she was fantasizing about being with me instead of you. She's a lovely girl, and I'm flattered that she thought so highly of me appreciates. I know Brenda the least. I saw her in Grisham for a while, but didn't have a chance to talk to her until you issued your ultimatum. Brenda was a classic bartender that night and listened to my story of woe, as all bartenders do. But there was something more. I saw compassion in her eyes, saw the pain on her face when I talked about my pain, and saw the anger that a woman could do this to a man who loved her. In a short time, Brenda and I formed a connection, and she helped me learn things that I couldn't find out on my own. By this point, Sarah was on the verge of a complete nervous breakdown. Tears flowed from her eyes, and her chest rose and fell rapidly with her rapid breathing. There was so much she wanted to say to Mark, but the words didn't come, and she didn't say anything. I have to say that I will truly enjoy having sex with these three beautiful women. I am thrilled that they have all shown interest in me and want to be with me. I'm sure I'm in for one amazing ride, aren't I? Sarah? But Sarah, I promised you that I would not be unfaithful in our marriage. How can I sleep with these women if I'm still married to you? I can't break my promise. I'm not built like that. So the only way is to not be married to you anymore. Brenda took the divorce papers out of her bag. Sarah, I'm a barmaid by night, but I have a day job. I'm a bailiff. You have been served with papers. I admit that this is the first time I have presented documents topless. She couldn't help but giggle at that comment. Sarah could no longer contain her emotions and burst into tears. Oh, Mark, please don't do this. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I hurt you. I'll do anything to make up for it. I love you and I want to be with you only. Sarah, Mark said, I find it hard to believe that you really love me, considering what you've been doing for over 2 years. It wasn't just a couple of times, Sarah. I'm sure it was over 100 times that you cheated with Tony, and I don't care if there were others, it doesn't matter anymore. The trial is scheduled for next Friday, and after we are officially separated, I will begin dating each of these ladies. Perhaps I will develop a serious relationship with one of these ladies and find the love and support that I thought I had with you. If this happens, perhaps I can stop loving you and eventually forget you. I hope so, Sarah, I really do. Mark told the ladies that it was time for them to leave and that he would contact each of them. He went into the house to gather a few things that would be useful while he stayed at the hotel until Friday, when either he or Sarah would officially move out. Unable to do anything, Sarah continued to sit by the pool and silently cry. Mark walked out the patio doors with his suitcases, then walked over to Sarah. She didn't know what else he could say, but it became clear in an instant. Sarah, remember what I told you about your lover. Yesterday, when you apparently canceled your appointment with Tony, he decided to move on to the blonde he works with every Wednesday from 9:30 to 10:30 in the morning. And by the way, this blonde was Gina Margarella, wife of Gino Margarella. Apparently Gino didn't like Tony sleeping with his wife, so he and a couple of his boys gave Tony a hard time. And don't worry, Sarah, I will of course deny any involvement in what happened to Tony, and of course Friday was my golf day and my brother and friends will be the perfect alibi. I wish you a happy life, Sarah. See you in court next Friday. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to